I was walking to my car in the underground parking garage of Patterson and Associates law firm when I heard it, a scream that would change everything I thought I knew about my husband's death, about my family, about the woman my son married. Ma'am, stop. Don't get in that car. My hand froze on the door handle. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it would break through. I turned and saw him, a security guard I'd never seen before, running toward me like his life depended on it. No, like my life depended on it. His name was Marcus. I didn't know that yet. All I knew was the terror in his eyes, the way his hand shook as he reached for me, pulling me away from my silver Honda like it was about to explode. I saw your daughter-in-law here last night. He gasped, doubled over, catching his breath. I saw her and some man. They were doing something to your car, something to the exhaust. The world tilted. The fluorescent lights of the parking garage suddenly felt too bright, the concrete walls too close. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Because in that moment, every suspicion I'd buried, every doubt I'd silenced, every instinct I'd ignored came rushing back like a flood that had finally broken through the dam. What are you talking about? My voice didn't sound like my own. Marcus pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. I review the security footage every morning, part of my rounds, and I saw this. He showed me the screen. Grainy, black and white, timestamp 2:47 a.m. There she was, Sophia, my daughter-in-law, crouched beside my car with a man in what looked like a medical coat. They were working on something underneath the vehicle. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a ponytail. Even in the poor quality footage, I could see it was her. I felt my knees go weak. Marcus caught my arm. I called a mechanic friend of mine, he said. He's on his way. But ma'am, I think they tried to kill you. Kill me. The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. No, like a revelation. Because suddenly, horrifyingly, it all made sense. Let me take you back. Let me tell you how I got here. Standing in a parking garage, 65 years old, staring at evidence that my daughter-in-law, the woman who cried at my husband's funeral, who held my hand during the burial, who called me Mom had tried to murder me. 2 months ago, my husband Vincent died. Vincent Castellano, the love of my life for 43 years. 67 years old, healthy, active, the kind of man who woke up at 5 in the morning to go jogging and ate salads without complaining. The kind of man who had his whole life planned out, retirement, travel, finally learning to play the guitar he had bought 5 years ago and never touched. They said it was respiratory failure. Natural causes. His lungs just gave up. That's what the death certificate said. That's what the doctor told me, shaking his head with that practiced sympathy they teach in medical school. Sometimes these things just happen, Mrs. Castellano. I'm so sorry for your loss, but I knew something was wrong. A wife knows, after 43 years of sleeping next to someone, of watching them breathe in the darkness, of knowing every cough and sigh and restless movement, you know when something isn't right. Vincent had been sick for months before he died. Not the kind of sick that makes sense, like a cold or the flu or even cancer, terrible as that would have been. At least it would have been real, diagnosable, something with a name. No, this was different. He was tired all the time, confused. He'd forget conversations we just had. He'd wake up dizzy, nauseous, weak. I took him to 3 different doctors. They ran tests, blood work, brain scans. Everything came back normal. Stress, they said. Maybe early onset dementia, maybe depression. We'll monitor it. But monitoring doesn't save lives, does it? Monitoring doesn't stop someone from dying in their own bed, alone, gasping for air that won't come, while the person they trust most in the world stands by and watches. Because that's what happened. Vincent died at home, and the only person with him was Sophia. Sophia, my son's wife, the woman who'd been part of our family for 5 years. The woman who seemed to appear out of nowhere and sweep my son Kieran off his feet with her charm, her intelligence, her seemingly boundless capacity to care. She was a pharmaceutical sales representative when they met. Beautiful, polished, always put together in those sharp business suits and expensive heels. She knew about medicine, about drugs, about how the body works. Kieran was proud of her. "She's so smart, Mom," he'd tell me, his eyes shining with that blind devotion that love creates. "She's going places." She was going places all right. Straight into my husband's confidence, into our finances, into our lives, like a virus that looks healthy until it's too late. It started slowly. She'd offer to pick up Vincent's prescriptions. She'd remind him to take his pills. She'd make him special teas, herbal remedies, she called them, things that would boost his immune system and help with the fatigue. She'd cook him meals, bring them over in those glass containers. Always so concerned, always so helpful. "You're so lucky to have her," my neighbor Gladys would say. "What a devoted daughter-in-law." Devoted. That's what everyone thought. That's what I wanted to think desperately, even as warning bells rang in my head that I kept silencing. Because what kind of monster suspects their own daughter-in-law of what? I didn't even have words for it then. But I should have listened to those bells. I should have trusted my instincts. Because in the last year of Vincent's life, things changed. Sophia started helping Vincent with his business decisions. She'd come over with documents for him to sign. Estate planning, she called it, making sure everything was in order. Vincent signed everything she put in front of him. He trusted her completely. "She's got a good head for this stuff," he'd say when I questioned him. "She's just trying to help Eleanor. Don't be paranoid." Paranoid. That word haunted me. Every time I raised a concern, every time I suggested maybe Sophia was getting too involved, I was paranoid, jealous, difficult. The bitter mother-in-law who couldn't accept that her son was married and building his own life. So I stayed quiet. I swallowed my doubts. I watched as Sophia became more and more essential to Vincent's daily life, more and more involved in our finances, more and more present, always there, always helping, always caring. And then Vincent died. I was out of town when it happened. Sophia had insisted I visit my sister in Phoenix. "You need a break," she'd said, her hand on my arm, her voice so sweet, so concerned. "You've been caring for Vincent nonstop. Let me handle things for a few days. I'll stay at the house. I'll make sure he takes his medications. You need to take care of yourself." I didn't want to go. Something in my gut screamed at me to stay. But Kieran had backed her up. "Mom, she's right. You look exhausted. Just go for a long weekend. Dad'll be fine. Sophia will take great care of him." So I went. I got on that plane, and 3 days later, I got the call. "Mrs. Castellano?" Sophia's voice thick with tears. "It's Vincent. I'm so sorry. I came to check on him this morning, and he wasn't breathing. The paramedics tried everything, but he's gone. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I don't remember the flight home. I don't remember the days that followed. It was all a blur of grief and shock and disbelief. My husband of 43 years was gone. just like that. While I was drinking margaritas with my sister and pretending to relax, the funeral was a nightmare. Sophia was there, of course, crying beautifully, her hand clutching Kieran's, playing the role of the grieving daughter-in-law to perfection. People kept telling me how wonderful she'd been, how devoted, how she'd taken such good care of Vincent in his final days. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab him and shake him and tell him that something was wrong, that Vincent shouldn't be dead, that this didn't make sense. But grief isn't rational, is it? And suspicion without proof just makes you look crazy. But then things started happening that I couldn't ignore. A week after the funeral, I met with Vincent's estate lawyer, Douglas Patterson. That's why I'd been at his office today, why I'd been in that parking garage when Marcus saved my life. I'd been meeting with Douglas about transferring Vincent's assets, finalizing everything, dealing with all the horrible bureaucracy that follows death. That's when I learned the truth, or at least the beginning of it. Mrs. Castellano, Douglas had said, his reading glasses perched on his nose, a thick folder open in front of him. I need to discuss some changes Vincent made to his estate in the past year. Changes. That word made my blood run cold. What kind of changes? Douglas cleared his throat uncomfortably. Well, it appears that 3 of your properties, the vacation cabin in Pinecrest, the rental property on Oakmont Avenue, and the commercial building downtown were transferred into joint ownership with your daughter-in-law, Sophia Castellano. The room started spinning. What? That's impossible. Vincent would never. He signed the documents himself. I have his signature right here. Sophia explained that it was for estate planning purposes to avoid probate taxes. She presented power of attorney documentation that Vincent had granted her. Power of attorney. Sophia had power of attorney over my husband's affairs, and I knew nothing about it. When? I managed to ask through the rage building in my chest. When did this happen? Douglas checked the dates. The first transfer was 14 months ago. The second was 10 months ago. The third was 8 weeks before Vincent's death. 8 weeks. 2 months before my husband died, he'd signed over property worth nearly $2 million to Sophia, and he never said a word to me. That's when I knew. That's when the grief turned into something else. Something harder, sharper, more dangerous. Grief can break you, but grief mixed with betrayal, with suspicion, with the slowly dawning horror that the person you loved might have been murdered, that doesn't break you, that forges you into something new, something that won't stop until it finds the truth. I left Douglas's office in a daze. I walked through that parking garage on autopilot, my mind racing, connecting dots I didn't want to connect, seeing patterns I didn't want to see, and that's when Marcus appeared. That's when everything changed. The mechanic arrived 20 minutes later. His name was Raymond, a gruff man in his 50s with oil-stained hands and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Marcus showed him the footage, explained what he'd seen. Raymond got down on his back and slid under my car. I stood there, hugging myself, shaking, even though it wasn't cold. I watched his legs, his work boots, heard his muttering, the clank of tools. When he slid back out, his face was grim. Someone tampered with your exhaust system, he said flatly. They rerouted it to pump carbon monoxide into your cabin. There's a modified pipe here, see? Professional job, actually. If you'd driven this car with the windows up, closed the vents, turned on the heat, you'd have been dead in 10, maybe 15 minutes. Probably would have just fallen asleep at the wheel. They'd call it an accident. Single car crash, elderly driver, maybe a medical episode. No one would ask questions. Elderly driver, I'm 65, not elderly. Not yet. But to them, to Sophia and whoever was helping her, I was just an old woman, an obstacle. Someone who could easily be removed, whose death would surprise no one. I need copies of that footage, I said to Marcus. My voice was steady now. The shock was wearing off, replaced by something cold and calculating. I need every second of it. Can you save it before it gets erased? Already did, Marcus said. I saved it to 3 separate drives. I've seen enough crime dramas to know evidence has a way of disappearing. This isn't going anywhere. I looked at this man, this stranger, who'd saved my life, and I felt tears burning in my eyes. Why? I whispered. Why did you help me? You don't even know me. Marcus's jaw tightened. I'm ex-military, ma'am. I did 2 tours in Iraq. I've seen enough death to last a lifetime. When I saw that footage this morning, saw what they did to your car, I couldn't just delete it and move on. I couldn't let you die if I could prevent it. He paused. And I heard them talking. The audio on that camera isn't great, but I heard enough. She said something like, just like with Vincent, make it look natural. She's old, everyone will believe it. The air left my lungs. Just like with Vincent. She said that. My voice was barely a whisper. She said his name? Yes, Ma, clear as day. Vincent. They killed Vincent. Sophia killed my husband. And then she tried to kill me too. I called my accountant that afternoon. Bernard Chen had been handling our finances for 20 years. If anyone could tell me what had really been happening with our money, it was him. Eleanor, he said when I arrived at his office, his face creased with concern. I'm so sorry about Vincent. I've been meaning to call you. There are some irregularities I need to discuss with you. Irregularities. Another bland word for betrayal. Bernard spread out bank statements across his desk. Months and months of them. I've been conducting an audit like you requested after Vincent's death, and I found unauthorized transactions, significant ones. How significant? $425,000, transferred to 3 different accounts over the past 18 months. All accounts that Sophia Castellano controls. I sat down before my legs gave out. $425,000, nearly $500,000 stolen from us, and Vincent never said a word, or maybe he didn't know. Maybe he was too confused, too drugged, too manipulated to understand what was happening. How? I asked. How did she do this? Bernard pushed a document toward me. Power of attorney. Vincent granted it to her 15 months ago. With that document, she could access his accounts, transfer funds, make financial decisions on his behalf. And she did. Bernard, did Vincent seem himself when he signed that? The accountant hesitated. I wasn't present for the signing. But Eleanor, between you and me, some of these transactions happened when Vincent was hospitalized, when he couldn't possibly have authorized them. I flagged them, questioned them, but Sophia always had an explanation. She said Vincent had pre-approved them, that she was just executing his wishes. She was robbing him blind, I said flatly. She was drugging him, confusing him, stealing from him, and then she killed him. Bernard went pale. Eleanor, those are serious accusations. I'm not accusing, I'm stating facts, and I'm going to prove it. I left Bernard's office with copies of everything. Every statement, every transfer, every piece of evidence that Sophia had been systematically draining Vincent's accounts. It still wasn't enough. It showed theft, fraud, financial abuse, but it didn't prove murder. For that, I needed to talk to Vincent's doctor. Dr. Imani Chen had been Vincent's primary physician for 12 years. She was brilliant, thorough, the kind of doctor who actually listened. I made an appointment to see her, told her receptionist it was urgent. She saw me the next day. Eleanor, she said, clasping my hands across her desk, I've been hoping you'd come see me. I've had concerns. Concerns I couldn't voice while Vincent was alive because of patient confidentiality. But now, tell me, I said, please, tell me everything. Dr. Chen took a deep breath. Vincent's symptoms in his final year didn't make sense. The fatigue, the confusion, the weakness, they didn't match any diagnosis. I ran every test I could think of. Everything came back normal. But he kept getting worse. What did you think it was? Honestly, I thought he was being poisoned. The word hung in the air between us like a guillotine blade. I recommended a toxicology screen, Dr. Chen continued. But Sophia, she was always at his appointments, always so helpful, always taking notes. She said Vincent didn't want to do it. Said he was tired of being poked and prodded. She convinced him to see a specialist friend of hers instead, someone who supposedly had experience with rare neurological conditions. Who was this specialist? I don't know. Vincent never came back to see me after that. The next time I heard about him, Sophia was calling to tell me he'd passed away. And the death certificate? Who signed it? Dr. Chen's expression darkened. I didn't. I would never have ruled it natural causes without a proper investigation. But Sophia had him cremated within 48 hours. She claimed it was Vincent's wish. No autopsy, no embalming, immediate cremation. As his medical power of attorney, she had the legal right to make those decisions. Medical power of attorney, of course she did. She'd thought of everything. Dr. Chen, is there any way to prove what happened to him now? Any tests we can run? She shook her head, sadly. Not after cremation. The evidence is gone. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I should have pushed harder. This isn't your fault. I cut her off. You tried. She blocked you at every turn. She knew exactly what she was doing. I left Dr. Chen's office with a fire burning in my chest. Rage. Pure, white-hot rage. Sophia had murdered my husband. She'd poisoned him slowly over months, stolen his money, manipulated him into signing over properties, isolated him from proper medical care, and then when he finally died, she'd rushed his cremation to destroy all evidence. And then she tried to kill me too. But she made one crucial mistake. She underestimated me. She thought I was just a grieving widow, too old and too trusting to ask questions. She thought she could tamper with my car and I'd die in a convenient accident and she'd get everything. She was wrong. I hired a forensic investigator. Her name was Diana Reeves, a former FBI forensic accountant who now worked privately, specializing in financial elder abuse and suspicious death. She came highly recommended, and I could see why the moment I met her. Diana was sharp, methodical, relentless. She looked at the evidence I'd gathered, the bank statements, the property transfers, the security footage, Marcus's testimony, Dr. Chen's concerns, and her eyes lit up like a predator who just spotted prey. This is a pattern, she said, spreading everything across her conference table. Your daughter-in-law is a professional. This isn't her first time. What do you mean? Dinah pulled up something on her computer. I did a background check on Sophia Castellano. That's not her real name, by the way. She was born Sophie Martinez, changed her name legally 8 years ago after some legal troubles in Nevada. What kind of legal troubles? Fraud charges. She was accused of scamming an elderly man she'd been caring for. Forged his signature on documents transferring property to her name. The case was dropped because the victim died before trial. My blood turned ice. He died? Heart failure, according to the death certificate. No autopsy was performed. Sound familiar? It was exactly the same pattern, the same method. She'd done this before. She'd killed before, and she'd gotten away with it. There's more, Diana continued. I traced the man in the security footage. Took some work, but I got there. His name is Dr. Trevor Walsh. He works in the emergency room at Mercy General Hospital. How do you know he's the one? Because I pulled his employment records and cross-referenced them with Sophia's phone records. They'd been in contact constantly, 247 calls in the past year. And get this, Dr. Walsh was Sophia's boyfriend 7 years ago. They dated for 2 years, broke up around the time that elderly man in Nevada died. I don't think that's a coincidence. Neither did I. Trevor Walsh was her accomplice, her partner, the medical professional who could provide drugs, falsify records, make deaths look natural. He'd helped her kill before, and he was helping her kill again. We need to get her to confess, I said. All this evidence is circumstantial. A good lawyer could explain it away. We need her own words. Diana smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Then let's give her exactly what she wants. Let's make her feel like she won. We spent a week planning. Every detail, every word, every move, choreographed like a deadly ballet. The plan was simple but dangerous. I would invite Sophia and Kieran to dinner. I would play the defeated widow, broken and ready to give up. I would tell them I was selling everything and moving to a retirement community in Florida. I'd divide up Vincent's personal belongings and make peace. And while Sophia celebrated her victory, while she felt safe and triumphant, cameras would be recording everything, every word, every gesture, every confession that Diana would pull from her with carefully planted provocations. I called Sophia on a Thursday afternoon. My hand shook as I dialed, but my voice was steady. Sophia, dear, it's Eleanor. Eleanor, she sounded surprised. We hadn't spoken since the funeral, except through lawyers. How are you? I've been better, I said, injecting weariness into my voice. But I've been doing some thinking about everything, about the family, and I don't want us to be at odds. Life's too short. Vincent wouldn't have wanted this. I heard her pause, calculating. I don't want that either. I've missed you. Liar. Such a practiced liar. Would you and Kieran come to dinner Saturday night? I want to talk about the estate, about dividing up Vincent's things. I want to make peace. I'm tired of fighting. Of course, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. The triumph. She thought she had won. We'd love to. What time? 7 o'clock. I'll make Vincent's favorite meal. Lamb roast with rosemary potatoes. That sounds perfect. We'll see you then. I hung up and immediately called Diana. She took the bait, I said. Good. I'll have the tech team install the cameras tomorrow. By Saturday, your house will be wired better than a TV studio. She won't be able to whisper without us hearing it. Saturday arrived like a storm on the horizon. I spent the day cooking, cleaning, preparing. Diana's team had been there Friday night, installing tiny cameras in the living room, dining room, kitchen. They were invisible, hidden in picture frames, in the wall clock, in the decorative plant on the dining table. High-definition video, crystal clear audio, all streaming directly to encrypted servers. Even if Sophia destroyed the cameras, the evidence would be safe. I set the table with Vincent's favorite dishes, lit candles, put on soft music. Everything had to look perfect, feel authentic. I was playing the role of my life. and I couldn't afford a single mistake. At 7 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I opened the door with a tired smile. Kieran stood there, my son, my baby boy, who I'd raised and loved and who now looked at me with cautious hope. Behind him was Sophia, blonde hair, perfectly curled, wearing a tasteful black dress, holding a bottle of expensive wine. "Mom," Kieran said, pulling me into a hug, "thank you for this, for reaching out." "Of course, sweetheart," I murmured, holding him tight. My son, my innocent son who had no idea his wife was a murderer. "Family is everything." Sophia kissed my cheek. I forced myself not to flinch. "Eleanor, it smells wonderful. You shouldn't have gone to so much trouble." "It's no trouble at all," I said, ushering them inside. "Please sit. Let's eat." We sat at the dining table. I served the food, poured the wine, made small talk about the weather, about Kieran's work, about anything except what we were really there to discuss. I needed them relaxed, comfortable, guards down. After the main course, after the wine had flowed and the tension had eased, "I've made some decisions," I said, setting down my fork, "about the house, about Vincent's properties, about everything." Sophia leaned forward slightly, interested. "Oh, I'm going to sell it all," I said, letting my voice crack just a little. "The house, the cabin, everything. I can't stay here anymore. There are too many memories, too much pain." I saw something flicker across Sophia's face. Satisfaction, victory. "Where will you go?" she asked, feigning concern. "There's a retirement community in Boca Raton, Ocean View Estates. I've been looking at their brochures. It seems nice, safe. They have activities, medical care on site. I think it's time I accepted that I'm not young anymore, that I need help." "Mom, you're not old," Kieran protested. "You're only 65. "Your father was only 67, I said quietly. "And look what happened to him. Life is fragile, sweetheart. I've learned that the hard way." Sophia reached across the table and patted my hand. Her touch made my skin crawl. "You're being very wise, Eleanor. Vincent would be proud of you for taking care of yourself." "Would he?" I wanted to scream. "Would he be proud of the woman who poisoned him, who robbed him, who tried to kill his wife?" But I smiled instead. "Thank you, dear. That means a lot." I paused, took a sip of wine. "You know, Sophia, despite everything, I know Vincent trusted you so much. At the end, he relied on you completely." "He did," she agreed. "I just wanted to help him, to make his last months easier." "You were always so good with his medications," I continued. "Always making sure he took everything on schedule. Those herbal teas you made him, he loved those." "Just some natural remedies," Sophia said. "Things to help with energy, with sleep, nothing harmful." "Of course not," I agreed. "Though I must admit, I never understood why he got so much worse in that last year. The doctors couldn't figure it out either. Dr. Chen was so puzzled." Sophia's expression tightened slightly. "Dr. Chen wasn't equipped to handle Vincent's condition. That's why I connected him with Dr. Walsh. He's a specialist in complex cases." There it was. She'd said his name, connected herself to Trevor Walsh. "Dr. Walsh," I repeated. "I don't think I ever met him. What kind of specialist is he?" "Emergency medicine," Sophia said, then catching herself. "But he has extensive knowledge of neurological issues. He was able to help Vincent where others couldn't." "I wish I'd known him," I said softly. "I wish I'd been there more at the end, but you convinced me to visit my sister and I." I let tears fill my eyes, real ones this time, because Vincent had died while I was gone, and I hadn't been there to protect him. I wasn't there when he needed me most. Eleanor, you can't blame yourself, Sophia said, but her eyes were sharp, watching me. Vincent's death was natural. Sudden, tragic, but natural. These things happen, do they? I asked quietly. The coroner seemed very quick to rule it natural causes. No autopsy, no real investigation. Vincent didn't want an autopsy, Sophia said firmly. He'd made that clear to me many times. He hated the idea of his body being violated like that. I was just honoring his wishes. How convenient, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Kieran looked up sharply. Mom, what's that supposed to mean? I held up a hand. Nothing. I'm sorry. I've been thinking a lot lately. About timing. About coincidences. About how Vincent changed his will just weeks before he died. About how he signed over those properties to you, Sophia, without ever mentioning it to me. He was preparing for the future, Sophia said, her voice taking on an edge, making sure Kieran and I would be taken care of. There's nothing sinister about that. And the money? I asked. The $425,000 that was transferred out of his accounts? The room went silent. Kieran's face went pale. What money? Your wife didn't tell you? I looked at Sophia. About the transfers she made using your father's power of attorney, about how she systematically drained his accounts over 18 months. Those were investments, Sophia said coldly. Vincent approved every single transaction. Did he? Even the ones that happened while he was unconscious in the hospital? Sophia stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to these accusations. Kieran, we're leaving. Sit down, I said. My voice was steel now. No more pretending, no more playing weak. We're not finished. Mom, what is going on? Kieran demanded. Ask your wife about my car, I said, staring at Sophia. Ask her about the parking garage, about what she and Dr. Walsh did to my exhaust system. Sophia's face went white, then red. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? Because there's security footage of you and Trevor Walsh tampering with my car at 2:47 inches the morning. There's a mechanic's report showing that you rerouted my exhaust to pump carbon monoxide into the cabin. There's audio of you saying, and I quote, just like with Vincent, make it look natural. She's old, everyone will believe it. Kieran stood up, knocking his chair backward. What? No, that's insane. Sophia, tell her that's insane. But Sophia wasn't looking at Kieran anymore. She was looking at me, and the mask had finally, completely fallen away. Her face was twisted with rage, with hatred, with something dark and vicious that had been hiding under that perfect smile all along. You stupid old woman, she hissed. You couldn't just die quietly, could you? You couldn't just have your little accident and let us get on with our lives? Sophia, Kieran's voice was horrified. Shut up, Kieran, she snapped. You want to know the truth? Fine. Your father was a fool, a weak, trusting fool who signed whatever I put in front of him. He was so easy to manipulate. A little confusion in his tea every morning, some sedatives to make him compliant, months of slowly poisoning him until his body just gave up. I couldn't breathe. Hearing her confess, hearing her say it out loud, was worse than I'd imagined. And you, she turned to me, you were supposed to die in Phoenix. There was a whole plan, but you came back too soon, before we could arrange it properly. So we had to improvise. The car was brilliant. Really. Carbon monoxide poisoning. You'd have just fallen asleep at the wheel. Single car accident. No one would have questioned it. You killed my father, Kieran whispered. You killed him. I freed him, Sophia corrected, from a miserable existence of slow decline, and I would have freed all of us if she hadn't been so stubborn about staying alive. She moved so fast, I almost didn't see it. One second she was standing by the table, the next she had a knife in her hand, one of the steak knives from dinner, and was lunging toward me with murder in her eyes. But I'd been ready. I knew she was dangerous. I knew she was capable of anything. I moved to the side. The knife slashed through empty air, caught the sleeve of my blouse, tore through the fabric. Kieran screamed. He grabbed Sophia from behind, wrestling her backward, and then the front door burst open. Police officers flooded in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Diana Reeves followed them, her phone in her hand showing the live feed from all the cameras. She'd been watching everything from a van parked down the street. Sophia Castellano, you're under arrest for the murder of Vincent Castellano, attempted murder of Eleanor Castellano, fraud, elder abuse. The officer kept reading rights while two others subdued Sophia, forcing her to the ground, handcuffing her while she screamed and fought. This is entrapment. She set me up. This whole dinner was a trap. A trap you walked right into, Diana said coldly, with cameras recording every word you said, every confession, every admission of guilt. They dragged Sophia out of my house. She was still screaming, still fighting, but it didn't matter anymore. Her words had condemned her, her own pride, her own arrogance, her need to boast about how clever she'd been. It had destroyed her. Kieran stood in the middle of the dining room, shaking, tears streaming down his face. He looked at me with devastation in his eyes. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I pulled my son into my arms and held him while he sobbed. I know, baby. I know. She fooled all of us. But she hadn't fooled me. Not completely. Not when it mattered most. The trial happened 4 months later. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage, the mechanic's report, the bank records, Dr. Chen's testimony about the suspicious symptoms, Diana's investigation linking Sophia to the previous death in Nevada, and most damning of all, the recordings from my dining room where Sophia had confessed to everything. The prosecutor played those recordings in court. Every word, every cold, calculated admission of guilt. The jury watched in horror as Sophia described poisoning my husband, stealing from him, manipulating him in his final months. They heard her call Vincent a fool. They heard her admit to tampering with my car. They heard her express no remorse, no guilt, only frustration that I'd survived. Trevor Walsh was arrested the same night as Sophia. He tried to claim innocence at first, said he barely knew her, that the phone records meant nothing. But then they found the drugs in his apartment, prescription sedatives, potassium supplements in quantities no one person would need, syringes, vials of compounds that had no legitimate medical use outside a hospital setting, and they found his financial records, deposits matching exactly with withdrawals from Vincent's accounts, payments for services rendered, blood money for helping Sophia murder my husband and nearly murder me. I attended every single day of that trial. I sat in the same seat, 3 rows back on the right side, wearing the same black dress Vincent had bought me for our 40th anniversary. I wanted Sophia to see me. I wanted her to look at me every single day and remember that I was the one she'd underestimated, the stupid old woman who'd brought her down. She never looked at me, not once. She sat at the defense table in her prison jumpsuit, her blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, her perfect mask completely shattered. Her lawyer tried everything: temporary insanity, diminished capacity, claiming the recording was taken out of context. But there's no context that makes "I poisoned him" sound innocent. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sofia Castellano, or Sophie Martinez, or whatever her real name was, received life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge called her a calculating predator who viewed human life as nothing more than an obstacle to financial gain. He said she showed no remorse, no humanity, no capacity for redemption. Trevor Walsh got 25 years. He'd cooperated eventually, provided details about how they'd done it, the drugs he'd supplied, the way they'd slowly poisoned Vincent over months, carefully calibrating doses to cause confusion and weakness without triggering obvious toxicity. How they'd planned my death to look like an accident. He cried when they sentenced him. Sophia didn't. She just stared straight ahead, her jaw clenched, her eyes empty. As they led her away in handcuffs, she finally turned her head. Our eyes met across the courtroom. And in that moment, I saw not anger or hatred, but something worse. Emptiness. She was hollow inside, a beautiful shell with nothing human left in it. I felt nothing for her. No pity, no satisfaction, just a cold, final sense of closure. Justice had been served. Vincent could rest now. But justice doesn't erase the damage, does it? It doesn't bring back the dead. It doesn't heal the wounds left behind. My son Kieran fell apart after the trial. How could he not? The woman he'd loved, the woman he'd married, the woman he'd defended against his own mother's suspicions she was a murderer. She'd killed his father, she'd tried to kill me, and he'd been blind to all of it. The guilt nearly destroyed him. He'd stop by my house and just sit at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, saying over and over, I should have seen it, I should have known. Why didn't I know? Because she was a professional, I'd tell him every time. Because she'd done this before. Because she was good at lying, at manipulating, at making herself seem like exactly what people wanted her to be. You loved her. Love makes us blind. That's not your fault. But he blamed himself anyway. How do you forgive yourself for bringing a killer into your family? For defending her while she poisoned your father? For believing her lies while your mother desperately tried to warn you? We started going to therapy together, family counseling. It helped. Slowly, painfully. We talked about the years of manipulation, the way Sophia had systematically isolated Vincent from me, from Dr. Chen, from anyone who might have asked too many questions. We talked about the warning signs I'd seen and ignored, the intuition I'd silenced because I didn't want to be the bitter mother-in-law everyone accused me of being. Your instincts were right, the therapist told me. Every single instinct. You knew something was wrong. You felt it. But society teaches women, especially older women, to doubt themselves, to be quiet, to not make waves, to be nice, even when nice might get them killed. She was right. I'd silenced myself because I was afraid of being called paranoid, jealous, difficult. I'd let my husband die because I didn't want to seem unreasonable. Never again. 2 weeks after the sentencing, I did something I'd been planning since the trial began. I went to visit Marcus. He still worked security at the parking garage, still did his rounds, still reviewed footage every morning. But I'd learned more about him in the months since he'd saved my life. Marcus Holloway, 43 years old, former Army sergeant, 2 tours in Iraq, honorably discharged after an IED explosion left him with PTSD and a metal rod in his left leg. He'd come home to a country that didn't know what to do with veterans like him. He'd struggled to find work, struggled with nightmares and flashbacks, struggled to feel like he had purpose. Security work was all he could get, minimum wage, night shifts, a job most people considered beneath notice. But Marcus noticed everything. Those instincts that had kept him alive in a war zone, that had made him question the footage of two people tampering with a car at 3 a.m, those instincts had saved my life. I found him in the security office, reviewing cameras like always. "Mrs. Castellano," he said, standing up quickly. "I didn't expect to see you. Is everything okay?" "Everything is more than okay thanks to you." I held out an envelope. "I wanted to give you this in person, to say thank you properly." He opened it hesitantly. Inside was a check for $50,000. Marcus's hand started shaking. "I can't. This is too much. I just did what anyone would." "No," I interrupted firmly. "Most people wouldn't have questioned that footage. Most people would have deleted it and moved on. Most people don't care enough to get involved. But you did. You saved my life, Marcus. And because you saved my life, a murderer is in prison. You gave me the chance to get justice for my husband. That's worth more than any amount of money." He sat down heavily, staring at the check. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll use it to do something good. Go back to school. Get training in something you love. Take care of yourself, 'cause you deserve it." Marcus looked up at me with tears in his eyes. "Your husband in the footage." I heard her say his name. "Vincent. He must have been a good man if you fought this hard for him." "He was," I said softly. "He was kind, generous, trusting, too trusting, but he had a good heart. And wherever he is now, I know he's grateful to you too." We talked for an hour. I learned that Marcus had always wanted to study criminal justice, to work in investigations, to use his military training to help people. But he'd never had the money for school, never had anyone believe in him enough to give him a chance. "Consider this your chance," I told him. I looked into programs. There's an excellent criminal justice degree at the state university. This money will cover tuition, books, living expenses for 3 years. You could be a detective, an investigator, someone who helps other people the way you helped me. Marcus enrolled the following semester. He calls me every few weeks to update me on his progress. He's thriving. He says he finally feels like he has purpose again, like his life means something. I established a foundation in Vincent's name, the Vincent Castellano Foundation for Elder Protection. It funds investigations into suspicious deaths, provides legal support for families dealing with financial abuse, and offers education about the warning signs of exploitation. Because Sophia wasn't unique. There are predators like her everywhere, targeting vulnerable elderly people, gaining their trust, stealing from them, sometimes killing them, and most of the time, they get away with it because no one asks questions, because old people die, and everyone accepts it as natural. I donated the vacation cabin, the one Sophia tried to steal, to a nonprofit that provides housing for domestic violence survivors. Women escaping abusive situations now have a safe place to heal, to start over, to rebuild their lives. Vincent would have loved that. He always said our good fortune should be used to help others. The rental property on Oakmont Avenue became a shelter specifically for elderly abuse victims, a place where older people who've been financially exploited, physically harmed, or manipulated by family members can find safety and resources. I kept the commercial building downtown and converted half of it into free office space for nonprofit organizations working on elder advocacy. The other half generates rental income that funds the foundation's work. The money Sophia stole, the $425,000, was recovered and returned to Vincent's estate. I donated every penny of it. I didn't want it. It was blood money stolen from my husband while he was dying, and I couldn't stand to touch it. Some went to Dr. Chen's hospital to improve protocols for protecting vulnerable patients. Some went to training programs for doctors and nurses on recognizing signs of poisoning and abuse. Some went to legal aid organizations that help families demand autopsies and investigations when deaths seem suspicious. I'm not wealthy anymore. I'm not poor. Vincent provided well for us, and I still have the house, still have enough to live comfortably, but I'm not interested in accumulating wealth. I'm interested in making sure what happened to Vincent, what nearly happened to me, doesn't happen to other families. 6 months after the trial, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went through Vincent's study properly, sorting through his papers, his books, his personal items. I'd been putting it off because it hurt too much, because I wasn't ready to face the emptiness of his absence. That's when I found the letter. It was tucked inside his favorite book, a worn copy of To Kill a Mockingbird that he'd read a dozen times, that had notes in the margins in his careful handwriting. The envelope had my name on it in Vincent's hand, but it wasn't sealed. Inside was a letter dated 3 weeks before he died. My dearest Eleanor, it began. If you're reading this, something has happened to me. I need you to know that I made terrible mistakes. I trusted someone I shouldn't have. I gave Sophia access to things, to our finances, to our properties, to decisions I should have made with you. I thought I was helping Kieran and his future. I thought I was being generous. But now I'm scared. My hands shook as I read. I've been feeling worse and worse. The doctors can't tell me why, but I know something is wrong. I know it sounds paranoid, but I think Sophia might be. I don't even want to write it because it sounds insane. But you've always had good instincts about people, and you never trusted her, and I dismissed your concerns. I'm so sorry for that. Tears blurred the words. If something happens to me, please don't just accept it. Please investigate. Look at the finances. Look at the medications I've been taking. Look at everything. Because I think I'm being poisoned, Eleanor. I think Sophia is poisoning me, and I don't know how to stop it or who to tell, because everyone thinks I'm just confused and paranoid. The letter continued.